Good afternoon. Welcome back to the Swing of Ages podcast. We're very fortunate to have repeat guest Mark Anthony Kay. This time, Mark is going to talk about his new Projekt Gemineye album, What Lies Beyond, which is out on April 21st, 2023. Mark, welcome back.
Hello, Preston. How are you doing today?
Fantastic. How are you? How is it in Canada?
Actually, we're doing pretty good here. We're finally getting some nice spring-like weather, no more snow, so it's all good.
Very good. I'm very happy to talk to you about What Lies Beyond. This is the seventh Projekt Gemineye album. Is that correct?
Yeah, can you believe it? Seventh album.
Yeah, and I just remember. You probably can't see this, so it won't show up in the video.
Oh, I can see it. Yeah.
I've had the album since it came out, which was their last album in the year 3073, Book 3. And of course, this is the vinyl root beer vinyl copy. So all your releases are special for me, especially all the vinyl copies. And I think I have all your vinyl releases. I understand that the What Lies Beyond will also come out on CD, download, and vinyl around April 21st. Is that right?
Yeah, what the digital will come out for sure, obviously on the 21st. The CD will be shortly after that, but the vinyl, you know how it is in this day and age. Sometimes the wait on these things are crazy, but I'm going to start the pre-order as soon as possible, and then hopefully it won't take as long as Book 3 did.
Yeah, and the thing I like about your CDs is even your CDs have a lot of great artwork, a lot of really great details about the album, and the vinyl is just it's kind of a cherry on top of all that. So I always get the download, the CD, and the vinyl.
Great. Well, I mean, I kind of want to make it that way because, like I said before, I appreciate when somebody buys my albums and, look, whether it's $20 or $30 or $12, that's still someone's hard-earned money, and I'd want them to feel like they've spent it wisely.
Right. So there's a difference between this and your prior release in the year 3073, Book 3, in that this isn't a continuation of that. You had a trilogy of albums which were fantastic in terms of developing a story. When did you start conceiving of What Lies Beyond?
Well, it's funny because we just mentioned the vinyl taking forever for Book 3 to get done. That was actually the catalyst for making this, because while I was waiting for this to come out, and I was making videos every once in a while to say, please be patient, it's coming, to all my supporters, I decided, you know what, rather than waste my time stressing on things like this, I'm just going to go and start writing some music. It's always been the thing that's kind of kept me level-headed and grounded. So I just started working on music with no real thinking of it being a record at that time. But once I started listening back to some of my ideas, I was like really pleased with some of it. And I decided that I would continue working on these songs in kind of in secret, kind of behind the scenes, because usually, as you know, Preston, whenever I do a record, I liked posting about it. Oh, today I did the drums. Today I worked on the bass guitar, and people like knowing what's going on with my records. But this time I decided to keep that quiet because really at first I wasn't sure whether this music was going to be used for a record or not. So once I decided, yeah, this is good enough to use, and I really liked it, I had done the guitars and the drums and stuff like that. So I just figured I'd keep it quiet and surprise people with the knowledge of a new record.
Yeah, Mark, that's a good point. I really wasn't expecting this album because the Projekt Gemineye in the year 3073 trilogy were coming really one after another. And then you had some solo work that you did, and then of course the Dark Monarchy. So you've been really, really busy the past few years.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun doing this kind of stuff. I mean, doing the Dark Monarchy and even helping Joe out with his releases that I'm now involved with. It's nice to do that because it kind of gives you something different to think about rather than just the Projekt Gemineye stuff, right? And I enjoy doing it and writing this new stuff. Like I said, the new stuff was really just sort of a way to get my frustrations under control about the vinyl taking so long to get done, right? So I just write when the urge comes to me, which is quite often, I'll be honest, right? I always have an idea that comes to my head, and I want to just go quickly record it on my little computer system here and then see what happens from there. But, it's fun. It's never been one of these things where I'm like, okay, today is, the 7th of May, I have to start writing a record. It's never been like that. It's always just been when the moment hits me. And I have 7 albums to show for it.
Yeah, 7 albums in quick succession. So let me ask you about this a little bit, because I think your vocal approach has changed since your last Project Gemini album. Has it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has, because I think I'm finding myself being a lot more confident in general in my singing. I mean, what's really helped is working in the Dark Monarchy. Joe is such a great singer, and he's always been very encouraging in this. He's always been sending me ideas for when we do our Dark Monarchy stuff. And he's like, and I listen to his ideas. And I'm like, are you sure I should do this? He's like, yeah, man, you're better than you think. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So he always kind of has been very encouraging with that. And I really appreciate that. And it's really kind of, I think, helped with my own singing. And like the last song on the album, the I'm Free on the vinyl, I mean, that's something that I don't think I would have done a couple of years back. Like that's sort of very stripped down vocal with just guitar and me singing. And that's something that's pretty risque for someone like me. So.
Well, yeah. Well, this album also, you handle all the instrumentation. Now, you've done most of the instrumentation in all the Project Gemini albums. I know you've had a few famous bass players step in. I know Joe has helped out, but here it's all you in terms of all the instrumentation. The drumming on your Project Gemini albums have always been very aggressive. I think it's even more so this album.
Yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed doing the drums. That's one of the things that I really enjoy when I make a record. I think I'm sort of a frustrated drummer. You know what I mean? I think I wanted to be a drummer in my, younger days, right? And I really like sitting down, going through stuff very finite and, picking through some kind of drum fills and making things up like the odd beats and stuff like that. So I really enjoy doing it. And the drumming for me is very much based around the guitar playing itself. Like if the guitar riff is very upfront and very punchy, then I think the drums need to complement it. And I tried to do that as well with the softer passages, not to make it so, bombastic and overtake the acoustic guitar. When acoustic guitar something comes up, it needs to be front and center more than the drumming should be, right? So hopefully that has come across this way. So I do try to kind of make those. I do kind of like making those sort of adjustments as well.
Yeah, I think that does come across. When I look at the first song, which is Cyber Wonderland, I also hear an extremely trebly clean bass part. Talk about that song and what you did in terms of developing it, what instruments, and the whole theme behind the song Cyber Wonderland.
So Cyber Wonderland was written about halfway through the writing sessions of the album. And when it was pretty much done, I knew it would be the first song that I was going to release and make it the first song because I thought it was catchy. It wasn't too long. Surprisingly for me, a 5-minute song is sort of short for me, So I was happy that I was able to do that and make myself satisfied with that because the little voice in my head usually says 5 minutes. Come on, make it 7, 8. Let's go, and I have to put that voice away, right? But the bass guitar was very much inspired by the late Chris Squire. I mean, I really love Yes music, as you know, and as you do as well, Preston. And I was listening to a lot of Yes. I mean, I was listening to Fish Out of Water, and I was listening to Relayer and all these records. And his bass sound has been kind of circling in my head. So I have an Ibanez SR400, sorry, a bass guitar. It's active. It has like the little EQ on it and everything. And I have a really nice active DI. So I plugged it into there. And I really went to try to focus in on a sort of trebly, butt punchy bass sound. Mm-hmm. And I always remember hearing when I watched these sort of videos about, mixing different bass sounds and creating bass sounds, that a good trick to do is to record the bass. When you're done your bass track, duplicate it. And on the duplicate track, take out all the bottom end in it, add distortion and a lot of compression, and then intermix it with the other one. Because that growly sound, like that little punchy, that Chris Squire gets, is a combination usually of like an overdriven Marshall sound with his other bass sound with the MPEG, right? So when you intermix those two sounds and you find that sweet spot, you get that sort of trebly, punchy sound that you can hear nicely and doesn't get overtaken by drums. But the bass end of it isn't so big and boomy that it doesn't drown out everything and kill the kick drum.
Mhm.
So that's for the bass.
Uh-huh.
Right? So the guitar end of it, I did something similar where I recorded 2 tracks of guitar with a Marshall sound, 2 tracks of guitar with a Mesa Boogie sound, and intermixed them as well. And that really worked as well. I found that blending sounds was really helpful in creating the sound. Now, as for the lyrical meaning of the song, now this is something that I found interesting, is that it was inspired by a National Geographic article I had read about, I don't know, a year or 2 ago, talking about cyber technology and its effect on humanity. And there was an interesting little quote that a professor said in there, that once medical technology fails us, will we depend on computer technology? And I was like, that's an interesting comment to think about. And they also put a point in there where they were saying that you have to be very careful with how dependent we are as a society on computer technology, and how addicting it can become. I mean, I'm not sure if you've seen this commercial. There's a humorous commercial that's circulating around where Ozzy Osbourne has these virtual reality goggles on, and he's playing a video game. And by the end of the commercial, he's in the house by himself with just a television. He's just in there playing it, which is, it's supposed to be a humorous thing, but if you think about it, the message is still there, where if you become too dependent on it, it could overtake your life and you could lose everything. You can lose your family, you could lose your job, you can lose everything if you become too deep in it. And interestingly enough, in that same article, they were talking about, in this research that they were doing, that they found this child, well, not child, he was like a teenager, who was so dependent on video games that he would sit in his room for 12 hours a day. He would go into the room in the morning with a bottle of cola, and by the time the day was half done, the bottle would be empty. And if he had to go to the washroom, rather than stop everything and go, he would pee in the bottle that was empty there, so he wouldn't have to stop playing these things. So it can become very much like a drug. And this song is sort of like a awareness to be cautious of this sort of stuff.
Yeah, very good. You can hear the lyrics because the mix is so great, Mark, and the guitar and bass, like I mentioned, are just fantastic. And I did not know that trick about recording basses, so thank you for that. One thing I should mention is that there are, on the CD version, there are 5 tracks. On the vinyl version, there are 4 tracks, but the vinyl, you get the extra track as a bonus. But this reminds me very much of the albums of the 70s and early 80s, where there's some epic tracks, which we'll get to. The next song is Angel Scream, but it's really well crafted. It's well produced, and I love the packaging of it. Let's talk about Angel Scream. That is a 14-minute track. I think it's the longest track on the album. And I just hear some great chorus of guitars and really apocalyptic lyrics.
Yes. So this song was very, I'm going to say special, and I'll explain why I say that. First of all, musically, it came to me first. It was the very first song that I wrote, actually, for this. Ironically enough, I never would have thunk that I would have wrote a 14-minute song first thing out of the gate. But it just came. I didn't fight it. Whenever I wrote a part and I saw that it fit with it, I left it be until I came to the end of it, and I said, okay, it flows not nicely. I don't hear anything that makes me cringe or make me want to pull anything out. So I left it as it is. And I was really happy with the clean sound. Again, another blending trick that I did. I recorded acoustic guitar, and then I got my Fender Stratocaster and recorded a very clean electric guitar, and blended those 2 tones together to get that sort of sound at the beginning of the song. So that worked really nicely doing that. But lyrically is the part where I think it's a bit special to me, because the song is inspired by the invasion of Ukraine. Now, why I wrote that is because when that first happened, I was sitting at home and my mother was here, okay? And my mom, the look on her face when it first happened, I only seen that look on her face once before, when she was very shocked over something. And I asked her what was going on in her head, and she said that she felt almost like a sense of deja vu because she lived through the invasion of Czechoslovakia. My father and her were there when it happened,
Wow.
and they left one suitcase in hand and got out of there. They had a pretty, normal life at that point. They had a home and they had farmland and all kinds of stuff that they had a comfortable living, and they had to leave everything behind and get out of there because of the invasion. Right. Mm-hmm. So when that happened here in the Ukraine, I sat down with my mom and talked to her about her memories of it. And I really wanted to use some of her firsthand storytelling into the lyrics of it. So when I write some of these parts, like, the one line in there, I say, the children laugh and play in the broken playground and the parents pray in the broken church grounds, is something that's taken directly from my mother's memories, where she remembers seeing kids doing that, like playing in a, children being so innocent can still try to find something fun to do, even in such a disastrous thing. They'll find a playground, even if it's broken, and they'll try to play with each other there and get their minds off it, which is something that a child can do, which is fantastic. Whereas the parents try to find a place of solace where they can pray and maybe hope for some better situation to come around. And in a broken church is even solace enough for some people to just find that peace that they need.
Yeah, it's an amazing song. Again, this is the epic of the album at 14 minutes and 40 seconds. If you have the vinyl in side 1, and side 2 starts with Seed and Soil. Tell me about that.
So Seed and Soil was another one of these songs that was written. This was more near the end of my writing cycle, but musically it was interesting because the way the song started initially was just with that bass and drum sequence that comes in about halfway through the beginning. Now, I had asked Joe Bailey to get involved in just doing the orchestration on this album. So that's the only thing that Joe has done on it, but his input and his contribution in that end was very big, in my opinion, because that orchestration that appears on Angel Scream and in this song, and even the last song, I think really helped give it a bit of more grandiose tone to it. All right. Mm-hmm. And the orchestration that he did in there, he asked me if he was able to tag something at the beginning of it. And I kind of said, yeah, I had an idea, maybe if you would put something at the beginning. And that piece that he put at the very beginning was so great. I can't even imagine starting the song with just the drums and bass. With that orchestra bit at the beginning, it really added some real mysticism to the whole musical part. I really enjoyed it. Now, the lyrical end of this is another thing that I found interesting, because I'm not one for politics and stuff like that as far as lyrics go, but I finding myself more and more as I'm getting older, becoming a little bit more annoyed with politicians as I get older. And one of the things that happened here in Ontario is the person who got elected premier promised the people of Ontario that he would leave the green lands and the forestry and all that stuff, that they wouldn't touch it. They wouldn't come down and cut parts of the forest down and stuff like that. And of course, months later, there's a big news report saying that he's already starting to make plans to cut sections of forest down to build housing. Now, his whole thing with that is that, well, we have so many immigrants coming in now and people coming in that we need housing to put these people into. And the big argument is that, okay, great, we're a country that loves immigration and welcomes it, but we have so many other places like within our own cities that could be developed and fixed up to house people. Why would you go and ruin our forests and stuff like that? And more importantly, they're sometimes they were threatening to cut down and mow down whole farmlands. Wow. And the farmlands are these are lands that have been given from generation to generation to generation. And the opening line, I live here 30 years past from father to son. That's a direct line from that, how that this, certain families have lived on these lands for a long time. And now you're going to get rid of this. And then what happens? And I've made a little commercial on my YouTube channel where I've said on it, what's more important, housing or food? Now, if you have all the housing, but at the cost of growing food, what's going to happen when you come to the grocery stores and the shelves are empty? Then what are you going to do? I mean, you can't, go to your wall, rip down a piece of your wall and eat it. Now you have to find food, you know what I mean? So I'm just, the song is more a message of another cautionary thing where let's not be silly and cut down too much of our forestry and stuff like that, or bust up our lands too much, because we're going to need it for feeding our people.
Right. So that's a wonderful message. It's not preachy at all. I love the playing. The lead guitar is soaring. Do you remember what you played on that? Which guitar?
Yeah, for the leads on this record, I played my Strats. Most of my rhythm guitars were my Les Paul.
Okay.
I did most of the rhythm guitars with Les Paul, but the solos I found I used my Stratocaster a lot.
Is that a change from last time? I thought you were using Les Paul more. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
the last one I used my Les Paul quite a bit, and a little bit of my SG, but this one I literally dusted off the Strat for this album and used it quite a lot.
Wow, sounds great. So the last song on the not last non-bonus song is I'm Free, which is over 11 minutes. Talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so I'm Free was another song that was motivated by a topic that's I'm sure not so unfamiliar to people, especially people listening to the podcast, I'm sure, and stuff like that, is the whole COVID situation that happened. And the main message I was trying to put across in there is that I find that sometimes as a people, we're not we don't see each other's opinions and respect them enough. I think sometimes, because there's two groups of people who thought that the COVID thing was very serious and took it very seriously. And then there's another group of people who said, we're maybe overreacting. We shouldn't stay inside so much. Let's try to live our lives, blah, blah, blah. And I have no problem with either opinion. What I do have a problem with is when you start telling other people that their opinions are wrong. Because, for example, I had a couple of friends that did get COVID, and one of them who came near death from it, right? And so when they tell me that, this is nothing big, you're overreacting, I kind of get a little upset about that, because I know a few people who I could have lost due to it. So you can't tell me that it's not a serious matter, right? And the whole way I wrote it with that whole opening line was like, hello, Alice, and I'm kind of like reading like a letter almost to her, is almost like an apology to my ignorance, almost, to her situation. Now, the thing is, you could take that message and apply it to many other things. It could be somebody who doesn't, appreciate another type of sickness. Maybe somebody has depression and doesn't think it's real, and he realizes that he made a mistake and he apologizes for that. Or cancer. It doesn't need to be just about COVID. Just the message, I think, is important, that we shouldn't be so narrow-minded and appreciate other people's opinions on things.
Great. So powerful song, not preachy, great guitars. As always, I love the feel of the song, and it's I love the acoustic guitar intros. I think it's fantastic. Mark, for acoustic, what'd you use?
I have a Yamaha AX 500, I believe it's called. It's one of those middle of the road acoustic guitars where it's not very expensive. I mean, you could probably pick one up for like $450 Canadian. So that's like, $200 US. Right? And it sounds great. It has electronic pickups in it as well. I never use that. I always just use my U47 clone microphone there. I have a warm audio one. I just, properly place it in front of the acoustic guitar, and I just record it like that, and it sounds good. The secret to that is to get the right sort of strings for it, like the Elixir, those Elixir brand strings that have those coatings on them. There's like those ones are great for acoustic guitar, and they last a long time. You can play it on it for like hours, and it still sounds nice and bright. So I highly suggest getting those kind of guitar strings for the acoustic guitar. So it really sounds good doing that. And the other big thing was that I found that while I did use keyboards on this record, I found I didn't use them as much on this record. I used them more to fill in space. What I did use a lot more is I used tones that are kind of like how Chris Squire used like the Taurus bass pedals, those really low tones. I used a lot of those in sections, like in choruses, to kind of fill in the bottom end, where when I did that, I could do a more melodic line on the bass, and I wouldn't lose the bottom end in the sound. Okay. Right?
It works really well. So if you have the vinyl copy, that's the end of the album. One thing that we talked about is that you have a really great approach to making records. You don't just think about singles or one song, but you think about the whole package. So that means the songs, the production, the sound from song from song to song, the vocal approach. But one of the things that you did with this was that extra bonus track, which you'll get on the CD, and you get as an addition on the vinyl when people can order the vinyl. So the last track is actually the bonus track, which is Brutal World. Um,
Mhm.
how did you come about deciding to add that track? And tell us about the track itself.
Okay, so Brutal World uh, was another song that I wrote about halfway through it. When it was what I do normally, Preston, is I record everything, mix everything, master it, and I go and sit there and say, okay, what am I going to put on the record now? Because for me,
Hmm.
I always want to release a vinyl version. And as you know, the limitation with vinyl is you need to do about 20 to 21 minutes aside
Mhm.
at the most, okay, before it starts getting a little crappy in sound. So I had to go through and pick out songs that would complement that side. So those two songs, Cyber World and The Angel Scream, fit perfectly. That was like just about 20 minutes.
Right.
And the other side was 6 minutes 11. That was like almost 18 minutes. That was perfect. The 18 minutes, when the guy who does my lacquer cutting heard that I had an 18-minute side, he was overjoyed. He was like, "Oh, thank you," because he goes, "The last two records you had such a long side. I was so stressed out trying to do it." So he was so happy that we had an 18-minute side this time. But when I did Brutal World, I really liked that song. And I did try initially to try to find a way to put it in, but it just wouldn't fit anywhere in there. If I used this song with this one, it was too long. If I took this song away and put that there and this, it was too short a side, you know? So, and I was determined that I wanted people to hear this song. So I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to put it on the CD as a bonus track, a kind of a tip of the hat to back in the days, Preston. You remember back in the day when they were releasing CDs and you would get like the Japanese version, they'd have a bonus Japanese
Right.
track on there.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a tip of the hat to that, right? But also, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this to you before or not, Preston, but with the vinyl, there will be an extra CD given inside there that not only has Brutal World, but 3 other additional songs as
Oh,
well
I
that I
didn't know
wrote.
that.
There's because I wrote a lot more songs, and
Wow.
I did really like those ones as well. And those ones will be with the vinyl version as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. No,
Yeah.
I did not know that. I knew we're getting Brutal World for all of us who ordered the vinyl, but that's fantastic news, Mark. Um, and here's my thing about bonus tracks. Usually in the 90s, early 2000s, you would get a CD would have bonus tracks, and most of the bonus tracks didn't need to be included in the album. They were
Yeah.
just filler. Not with your stuff. I mean, every time we get a bonus from your work, from Project Gemini work, it is fantastic. Or even from the Dark Monarchy, it's like, wow, this could be a whole basis for a new album.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm Brutal World really works really well. It's over 9 minutes of excellent music, and I'm looking forward to a vinyl copy as well with the additional tracks. Um, is there anything else about the album you want to discuss?
Well, I wanted to say that, for example, the album cover on this. Once again, James McCarthy, who has done all my album covers, has done this one as well.
You're Roger
It's
Dean, basically.
ironic. Yes, yes, my Roger Dean. Basically, what I found very ironic about it is that I've, just like before, I've only ever given him a title and told him to go with whatever his gut tells him to do. And when he came back with this album cover for me this time, I was so impressed. And I was almost thinking to myself, there must be some sort of telepathic thing happening here, because I kind of had the idea where with the title where I said, what lies beyond, almost like doorways, like, each song is like a message and the doorway leads to a possible situation, almost like a choose your own adventure. Like if you go through this door, the story will end this way. If you go through this door, the story will end this way. So when he showed those little doorways in there, I was like, this is perfect. This is exactly what I was trying to get across lyrically. And I never told him any of that. So I'm very happy with the artwork. I do want to make a point about that he did a great job with it. Also, Jason Paulin, who's done all the graphic stuff on my prior albums, is doing the graphic stuff with this again. It's looking really, really good. His center labels that he designs for the vinyls look really fantastic as always. And the back cover designs that he makes are great. So it's going to be good. And once again, there will be a poster as well for this. There will be a sticker included with this. And my goal is to keep everything the same cost as it was last time. I really want to have everything the same, because nowadays when people are complaining and hearing about the cost of vinyl skyrocketing up, I want to be at least one of the people that they can say, you know what, when I bought my Projekt Gemineye album, I didn't have to go and spend an extra $20 on top of what it would normally have been.
Well, Mark, one of the things I love about your projects is, well, the music's great, but I like the attention to detail with regard to the artwork. And I'm one of those weird people that I collect vinyl, but I will play the vinyl once and then probably never play it again, because I really prefer the sound of a CD. And so for me, it's a great collector's item. And all the posters from the Projekt Gemineye albums, I have in a frame. They're all framed and all hanging in my house, because their artwork is standalone artwork, and the music's just great. So it's a great package to have on CD. It's a great package to have on vinyl, just for the artwork. And I thank you for that. So of course, this is available through your website for Projekt Gemineye as well as Bandcamp, and I'll put the link in the description of this episode. Anything else, Mark, you want to add?
Yeah, well, I want to add right now that now that you mentioned that you put the artwork and framed it, I really want to thank you for telling me that, because when I hear something like that, it really makes me now really feel pleased that I do this sort of stuff, that people actually take it like that and actually would want to willingly put it up on their walls. It makes me now even make me want to make sure that the quality of the artwork is that good that people will continue to do that. So thank you for saying that, Preston. I really appreciate that. Other than that, the record, like I said, well, like you said, the record will come out on the 21st. There's, the single is out right now, Cyber Wonderland, which you can get on the Bandcamp site. I might release one more of the singles, maybe one of the bonus tracks on as well, just one more, just to give people a little something extra while they wait. But other than that, I have a good feeling about this record. The CDs, when you order the CDs, because I will start the pre-order for the CDs probably sooner than later. The wait for the CDs are not long. Usually once I give them the stuff, it's like a 2-week turnaround, and then I can start sending CDs. So fear not with the CD of things, but please again be patient with the vinyl end of things, because it will be a little bit longer.
Yeah, well, I'll still have the music before I have the vinyl, and that's perfect. Absolutely love the album, and I appreciate all the support you've given my podcast and all the help, and appreciate what you do. And we'll be talking soon. So thank you very much, Mark.
You're very welcome, Preston.
Take care.
Thanks.